Hello guys, and welcome back to another Divinity Original Sin video. Disclaimer, I'm still not feeling particularly well doing this video, but like I said in the previous one, I wanted to get all the advanced builds out in the open sort of together. So here I am. Hope you're well. This should be interesting. I'm hoping there's like one or two things at least you pick up from this build guide, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, let's cozy up next to the fire and let's get some information out there. Okay. So as always, we'll begin with the most common question you get is, which race should I pick to play a necromancer? Now I want you to bear in mind this is for a 4-man party, physical party focus. What should you pick as a necromancer? Typically it does matter about your other classes and stuff because there might be more optimal races for them, but this is pretty cut and dry as to what is the best in my opinion. An elf, be it Sibyl or a custom, for me they make the best elves. I would always use this even over a Thane, for example, just simply because of flesh sacrifice. Flesh sacrifice gives extra AP, which is great for everybody, of course, but the damage bonus is better for a mage, so that already makes more sense. And just the fact that the flesh sacrifice leaves a blood surface for elemental affinity, so it's got so many things going for it to be a necromancer. So every day of the week you're picking an elf. Though personally I probably would go with Sibyl over the custom, simply because she can pick up a talent called Rooted, which gives you extra memory slots, and you do end up using quite a bit of memory with this build. So it kind of makes sense for her to fulfill that. In terms of your attributes, you should be looking to maximize your intelligence first, as that is going to increase the damage of all your spells. Your secondary attribute point focus should be in wit, which is going to increase your critical chance. With this build, maybe not so much throughout the game, but particularly at late game where you can be a lot more flexible with your gear. As you can see here, we've got 14 in strength and 14 in finesse to wear certain items. But aside from meeting requirements, you're focusing points into intelligence, wit, and then as many points as you need for memory. But you want to keep this as trim as possible so you can do as much damage as possible. But don't feel bad if you find that you're spending a little bit more points into your memory being a mage, because that's completely normal. Constitution is something that you tend to avoid completely, but simply because of my leg choice and because we are playing as an elf, I've needed to put a few points into Constitution so that I don't drop my gear during fights. So it's just something, again, just to be mindful of. Also, this, particularly in the early game when you're really lacking spells, this is again a consideration because you're lacking spells and you may be carrying a shield for bouncing shield. And obviously shields require Constitution, and using flesh sacrifice, that could be a little bit of a problem, so just bear in mind. So that's what we're looking like there. In terms of your school combat abilities, where should you be putting your focus? So In terms of your damage, you have the choice between Warfare, Two-Handed, Huntsman, are all very viable choices. Because you are a singular score of damage, as in your blood, your physical, you can focus on the element that suits your damage best. So in this case, it would be Warfare, because Warfare increases physical damage. So the attribute that you will be putting points into first will be Warfare. And then you have the option of Two-Handed or Huntsman. I would suggest going Huntsman through early to mid game for sure. You will get more damage from a Huntsman than putting points into Two-Handed. During later in the game, again, I would still apply the same rule. I would go Warfare, Huntsman, and then Two-Handed. But there might be some specific fights that you want to set up specifically for, where you 100% cannot get the high ground. So it would make more sense to go Warfare, Two-Handed, or Scoundrel. You can go either, but I guess Scoundrel does give you the movement. But in terms of damage, it's basically the same thing. So yeah, Warfare. So the rules are, in general, you're going to go Warfare, Huntsman, and then Two-Handed or Scoundrel. For specific fights where you're not going to be able to get high ground, you can always then go Warfare, Two-Handed or Scoundrel, and then Huntsman. Other notable thresholds that you will want to hit, you will want to get at least 2 points into Aerophurge. You will want at least 3 points into Hydro and 3 points into Necro, so you can get Bloodstorm. 5 points into Poly for Apotheosis, 2 points in Pyrokinetic for Mass Corpse Explosion. In terms of the talent points, these things can change throughout the game, but as you can see, we got Rooted from her own personal quest, which gives the memory, which is very, very helpful. Let's take it the other options that you have though. So a lot of this very much depends on the stages of the games, because there's other times where things make more sense. So for me, again, we see the same old familiar faces of Glass Cannon, Executioner. Those two are probably what I would be looking at picking up first. Glass Cannon gives you the 6 AP, Executioner gives you the additional 2 AP for a kill, so they're really, really good in terms of getting your AP back. And then I would say level 8. I mean, you could go for Elemental Affinity, you could go Savage Sortilege, you could go Water Rush, but I probably would go Affinity or Sortilege before Water Rush. My thinking is you can pick up in the 5th slots Water Rush. So you have Glass Cannon plus Water Rush. And the other 2 talents, yeah, you would pick up Sortilege. Maybe it depends on your gear. So, okay, level 1, Glass Cannon. Say level 3, Executioner. Level 8, more than likely, you're not really going to have a good amount of crit, so it's probably worth looking at Elemental Affinity. Maybe level 9, if you decide to pick up a whole bunch of gear, you could then maybe switch that up and go with Sortilege before Elemental Affinity. So it is quite gear dependent. If you're yeah, I would say it's very, very gear dependent. If you're just playing through the game, brushing through it, not really focusing on the gear so much, the Sword of Leech will have less of an impact because you won't have as much chance to crit. So, if I would say the order of talents is very dependent on the gear. So, once you gain a substantial amount of critical, you'll be looking at picking a Sword of Leash. Once you get 13, you'll have Affinity plus Sword of Leash for sure. And then, like I said, the 5th talent point, some honorable mentions might be Mnemonic or All Skilled Up. Though, if you can put the 3 points into Intelligence, I would take Mnemonic over All Skilled Up. Hothead is it's a solid talent, but if the focus is using Water Rush and Death Wish, it conflicts completely with this, so you need to choose one build or the other. Whereas I personally choose the whole Death Wish route. So I tend to overlook Hothead for the most part. Other options, I mean, you could look at Far Out Man, but to be honest with you, the 5th talent choice would more than likely just be Water Rush. This would give me access to 7 AP from the beginning of combat, and I really wouldn't be looking at anything else. Just to let you guys know, like when it comes to like talents like 5-star Diner, I've never used it because I see them as completely broken. So when it comes to talents, I don't even consider them. So yeah, I would say very gear dependent, but you're looking at Glass Cannon level 1, Executioner level 3, 8 and 13. You're looking at Affinity and Sword of Leash, more than likely, and then at 18 you're looking at adding Water Rush to the mix. Looking at the gear, you will be looking for gear with Intelligence on it, Wits, Critical Chance. You'll be looking at Two-Handed, anything that kind of helps you meet requirements. Warfare, Huntsman, Scoundrels quite a nice one to have. But yeah, a lot of basically you're gonna have a lot of options in terms of your gear. So if we look at just quickly at what we got here, we got the Intelligence, Warfare, Huntsman, Hydrosophist, Summoning just happened to be on it. We're using the Devourer chest piece so we can get 3 runes inside, and that comes with Warfare and Critical Chance again. I like these gloves in particular. Normally I would encourage you to pick up gloves which has Two-Handed on them, but this pair has 5 Intelligence, comes with like +2 of a school skill, which is like somewhat of an equivalent to having Two-Handed on it. So yeah, very, very solid pair. The belt you should be looking for +2-handed on, because that's going to increase your damage, which is why the whole argument between having two-handed weapons or like wands, you should always go for the two-handed. And the reason for that is because you can get two-handed on your belt and you can get two-handed on your gloves. So here, as you can see, just because I'm using a two-handed weapon, I'm able to make use of the two-handed on my pieces, which wouldn't normally be able to grant you extra damage. So like with your belts, for example, typically they're just like your defensive stuff, plus you can get two-handed or you can get crit on it as well. So you go for the stuff that adds extra damage to your build. And that's the whole reason for going two-handed. Got finesse, which is helping us meet the requirements for the gloves. Get some wits and get some scoundrel on the boots, which is really, really nice. Got Falone. Again, high critical chance on this one, strength, intelligence, warfare, two-handed, everything that a necromancer wants. Comes with a nice skill, living on the edge. Again, more of those familiar stats that we're looking for. And then I've added these pants. I've been previously using, where is it? Previously was using these ones actually, which again, is something I've never seen people do. But these pants are pretty amazing for the mages. It gives you 2 huntsmen, and yeah, it's better than anything else you can get at that time in the game. So yeah, really nice leggings there. And obviously with this pair you get 2 rune slots, which is why I really want it on the necromancer, just because necromancers do stupid amount of damage. So yeah, those, I mean, it's not the highest crit chance in the world, but in terms of like raw consistent damage, I'd say it was a pretty good setup. But yeah, that's the idea of the gear you should be looking for throughout the game. In terms of the skills we're going to be using, this is very much an end game build. Very much. Throughout the game is going to look different for you. Like for example, the likes of maybe Decaying Touch you will use for the first few levels of the game. Infect, Mosquito Swarm you're going to be using early to mid game to late game, up until you really get your super powerful spells. But they're gonna be relevant throughout the game. But it gets to a point where some spells become so powerful you are much better off just using them, reducing your memory pool, increasing your damage, so you can do super good damage with your really high damage spells. So hence why you don't see the likes of Mosquito Swarm infecting this. Doesn't mean it's always been like that throughout the game. Never Swap is something, again, you could consider using, but if you have access to Skin Graft and another teleport user, you don't really need any more than that, in my opinion. Blood Rain not in this build at the end here, but it does serve purpose throughout the game, so that's something else that you can be using. Early game, Bloated Corpse would be very relevant for you. It will do some AoE damage. It's not the hardest hitting because you're not increasing your summoning. But again, because you're so short on spells, Raised Bloated Corpse will be something that you will use for a good period of time. Probably definitely early game, maybe through to like mid game. Restoration is probably something that you will consider using early game as a way to deal damage. You might be using this for undead fights. It'd be particularly useful. Armor of Frost is a consideration early game. Or I mean, even now it's not a terrible spell to have, but I just find I don't get hit. So yeah, then there's that, and then you can use haste, you can use tactical retreat if you want to, but these are all perfectly good options. At one point I even tried Bone Widow, but it was just a far inferior option to Bloated Corpse, so it didn't really stay on the bar for very, very long. So the best way to use these late game spells. Living on the Edge, for me, more than anything, it's just a really ideal way of setting up fights. So they can't go below 1 HP, so you use this on a character, you reduce their HP down to 1, and this is where your combination with Death Wish allows you to get as much damage as possible. So that is the way that I tend to use it. And during combat, obviously, it's a lifesaver. You can use this on summons. You can use this totems if you really are attached to them. But yeah, it's just a big lifesaver. It's kind of good to use when like you're coming up against enemies that can one shot you. You know, that's the most ideal situation to use it. Very costly though, very costly. Death Wish. Death Wish is amazing. It's better on casters than skill users because the damage is multiplied instead of added. So it has more value on a necromancer. So yeah, best way to use it is obviously get down to 1 HP, cast this bad boy, and then you'll be doing, if you're down to 1 HP, you'll be doing 99% increased damage. And obviously, if you're using Water Rush, you want to be below a certain threshold. So it just makes sense. Again, you will not suffer any of the negatives or downsides as long as you are dealing high damage, crowd controlling, and killing so they don't get turns. Grasp of the Starved. Super powerful. Ridiculously powerful. I don't really know what there is to say about it. I mean, before you get Bloodstorm, you'll be wanting to like use this either like alongside the Raining Blood in Raining Blood. Yeah. Maybe this is where Bloated Corpse can help out a little bit as well. But you'll be using it, the Raining Blood. You set the blood on the ground. And then you'll cast Grasp of the Starved. But you don't need Raining Blood anymore as soon as you get Bloodstorm, because Bloodstorm does the job that Raining Blood was doing before. What it does is it puts blood at the feet of your enemies. So you combo the Bloodstorm and then you Grasp of the Starved afterwards. Your Corpse Explosion combos really good with your teleportation. Sometimes handily there will be corpses around before the beginning of the fight, which you can use to do ridiculously good damage. Or you can teleport corpses if you want to be cheesy, or you can teleport a dead corpse inside of the combat itself. And then use the Corpse Explosion on that corpse that you've teleported. Teleport, you can do AoE damage. There's so many good things you can do. You can teleport for AoE damage. You can teleport dead corpses. You can teleport enemies to bunch them up. You can teleport. You can teleport enemies onto your totems to kill them, so you get Executioner. You can use teleport on a character, and you can even discover stealthed enemies as well. So let's say there's a stealth enemy right here. We can't see him, so there's a number of ways we can determine where he is, right? We can like scout with our mouse, so we just cover the ground, and usually when you stumble upon the stealth character, it won't allow you to go into that area with the mouse. It would kind of force you to go around it. That's one way to know this. But the way to do it with teleport is you simply just cast teleport. You just go to teleport any character, and like I said, if it was like here, what you would see is you would see like a small circle, so you can identify where the stealth character is. That's pretty cool, huh? So teleport has so many good uses here. Also, a really, really cool thing is blood surfaces can be electrified, meaning we can get elemental affinity for our blood spells and our teleportation. So essentially, what we can do is we can have 3 AP Bloodstorm, 1 AP Grasp of the Starved, 1 AP Teleportation. That is a lot of AP reduction. And if you think about what we've already achieved, we've achieved Water Rush, we've got Elemental Affinity, and we have Death Wish. So if you look at everything that we can put into the combination at reduced cost, is ridiculous. We can bring the rest of the enemies together for very, very cheap whilst doing AoE damage. And we can follow up with like so Bloodstorm, Grasp of the Starved, Skin Graft, there's Adrenaline, there's Flesh Sacrifice. Like, all of this stuff coming together is juicy. Okay, so next up, Peace of Mind is just a simple damage and crit buff. That's all I simply use it as. Challenge, very safe to use. There's really no risk in this. You can mark enemies at the beginning or when you're about to kill them if you're not so confident. There is some things just to bear in mind when using this though. You don't want to be using this when you're decayed because the heal will damage you. And the other thing is you need to consider is your teammates using challenge as well. You do not want to try to stack challenges because it will remove the first one that you put up on the enemy. So just be mindful of challenge. And it's really nice with challenge is that it requires free warfare, which is something that you're naturally going to be building anyway. So other mages just don't have that luxury of getting this without hurting their damage in some way. Skin Graft and Apotheosis I'll touch on in a second. Not Flesh Sacrifice, Tactical Retreat. You can either use Tactical Retreat or Haste. I guess I go with Tactical Retreat because it does allow you that jump if you need it, but more than often you just don't. You could even just use this before the combat, and honestly, you can the way you can sort of set up, you can like get your blood, you can get it electrified, and then you can just Tactical Retreat on the surface at the very beginning. That means you start off the fights with haste. I'm only suggesting this if you don't need to use Tactical Retreat during the fight. It's just a way of getting haste. And this way you don't need haste and Tactical Retreat. You can just be like, okay, I don't need to jump during this fight. Okay, Tactical Retreat, let's go. And start off the fight like so. Obviously you're not going to be doing that if you do need to jump during the encounter. So, I don't think there's any sort of special. I mean, I've already touched on teleportation, killing your summoner's totems. The idea behind that is just to increase your AP for the turn. So there's ways for like your team to kill totems, increase your turns, and just given that extra utility of the totems that people are just not really aware of. So like a ranger could use ricochet, barrage as a way of dealing damage to enemies and getting an execution down. A warrior could use crippling blow. In your case here as a necromancer, you can use teleport and you can use corpse explosion. So what you can do is you can say a totem's here and like a group of enemies around here as well. You can always choose to teleport a dead corpse on top of them all, do damage to the group, kill the totem, and then you have something to corpse explode. Perhaps you have a group of enemies here and you also have a dead corpse. You put a totem down. You can then just explode the corpse, do a whole bunch of damage, kill the totem, extend your turn with the executioner. Mass corpse explosion, it's a little bit trickier to use. You can use this from high ground, by the way, the explosions, and it is the best way I found in using the spell, because obviously it gives you additional range. Best ways to use this is, I mean, if you really want to be cheesy, you can pile a bunch of corpse up. I mean, like, what's the point? But no, like, best thing to do is what you should be doing anyway is like grouping like a bunch of enemies together. After a few of them die or so, you can always corpse explosion and do a whole bunch of damage to them that way. But it is a lot easier using it from high ground. Like earlier during the game, you're going to be using your single targets range spells, infect, mosquito swarm. But then once you gain access to Bloodstorm, you could honestly, at that point, you could drop mosquito and infect, because Bloodstorm, Grasp of the Starved, in combination with Skin Graft, Death Wish, Apotheosis, the enemies just aren't going to be living through those those few spells that you do have. So there's no need for any of the once useful spells. So in terms of like playing with your combination, you're gonna be looking at okay, depends on circumstances in the fight, but in terms of like outputting your damage, right? So imagine we're 18 and we have Water Rush as well. We're down to 1 HP. So you can always begin the fights with like a pool of blood, and it's being electrified by your summoner, who is using this wand. So it's an air wand. So you can always like reliably start off like that, and then you can either like on the edge, just tactical retreat, or you can just move if you really have to. But anyway, so you've got your surface set up, you've got your electrified surface. You can... The one thing that you do have to be, thinking about it, the one thing you have to be wary of is with your own flesh sacrifice and an electrified surface, you need to just be careful of soaking up that electricity, because you are a glass cannon, which means you're going to absorb the surface if you stand on it fully. So you're gonna have to position like very carefully, like right on the edge, so you don't get shocked. But anyway, so considering that, actually, more than likely what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to like move to the surface, move towards the surface, but don't stand on it. You flesh sacrifice, so you've used 1 AP, so you're down to 6. Use flesh sacrifice, you're back at the 7, and then you can use the rest of the free movements to stand on the surface. You can Peace of Mind, you can Death Wish, or if other characters want to, or whatever. For for sure. There's something I've actually not touched on at all, is Inner Demon. Now, this is something that you can use as an option, but I didn't actually get it because I didn't want to get too much experience for my content. But that is also a potential option that I've not actually mentioned, by the way. So yeah, so we Flesh Sacrifice, we're on the surface. We can choose to Peace of Mind if we want to. We can Death Wish if we want to. Do I have enough AP to do that? I'm not so sure. How many enemies do I need to teleport? We can teleport 1 for 1 AP. So let's just say it's an ideal situation, okay? So we're at 7 AP. We've already taken the time to Peace of Mind ourselves, so we don't need to do that. So we're still at max AP, and we will oh, hang on, no. I would Apotheosis before combat as well, actually. Apotheosis before combat along with the Peace of Mind. There you go. Now you're golden. Apotheosis, Peace of Mind before combat. Perfect. So then you can do Bloodstorm, which takes you down to 4 AP. You can cast Adrenaline, that puts you to 6 AP. No, I'm being a retard, aren't I? I am being a retard here. Start off combat with Apotheosis and Peace of Mind. That's perfectly fine. You walk from here. You take a step. You use 1 AP. You cast Flesh Sacrifice. Then you use the rest of the 3 AP to get onto the surface to be Electrified Blood. So you're on 7 AP. You cast Death Wish on self. That puts you on 6 AP. And then you can look at doing Bloodstorm, putting you down to 3 AP. You cast Adrenaline. You know, if you had to teleport, that's another thing that you could have done. So you've used your 2 big powerful spells. You've still got plenty of AP left. You can skin graft. You can challenge one of the potentially dead enemies. You know, once you've done the Death Wish, Grasp of the Starved, Bloodstorm, maybe even Corpse Explosion, who knows what position you are during the fight if anyone has died, you can basically just reset, get the Adrenaline back, get the Flesh Sacrifice back, get all those same spells back again. I mean, let's consider it. So, like, Death Wish would cost you 1 AP. This could cost you 2 AP if you're using it twice. That's 3 AP. Use it, that's 9 AP with this. 9 AP. If we look at what we begin with 7 with Water Rush. 7 with Water Rush. 9 for 2 Flesh Sacrifices. Oh my days. Jesus. 7 Water Rush. 9 with Flesh Sacrifice. 13 with Adrenaline. 15 AP for an Execution. 15 AP. Death Wish is 1. That's 3. That's 9. That's 10. You could cast 2 of these. That's 12. You can cast... Oh my god. You can cast Death Wish once, Grasp of the Starved twice, Bloodstorm twice, Corpse Explosion once, Mass Corpse Explosion twice, Skin Graft, two teleports. I think anything in your path is pretty much dead at that point. That is why Necromancer is the most notorious, overpowered nonsense I've ever seen. And then if you're comboing that with a quality build and you're critting, and if you're doing it all from high ground, like, what chance does the enemy have? Playing a Necromancer is almost unfair. And the hilarious thing about Bloodstorm is that it front loads a lot of damage, but it does it over consecutive turns. Again, it's just not fair. So yeah, during the late game, this is pretty much all you need. I mean, get rid of that. I'd even argue you don't even need tactical retreat, to be honest, but yeah. So I'd say the main takeaways here, guys, is keep your build trim. Don't split attributes. Just focus intelligence. Only put points in these if it's necessary to meet requirements for really good pieces of gear. Build the way that I've shown you, and you're gonna wreck. I think you're gonna go from thinking the game is really hard to like it's really easy, and that's the funny thing with this game. It's very glass cannon-esque. It's very much you can, if you one-shot the enemies, you're gonna be thinking, wow, this game is easy. However, if you don't land that CC, you don't land that kill, you're the one that's going to end up being one shot, and then you're going to be thinking this game's super hard. It's really fine balance from going one way or the other, and that is just how the game ends up going. That it just becomes a glass cannon fight. Either you one shot them or they one shot you. It's really lacking balance. But yeah, that's how I would look at building. That's how I would look at setting up for fights. That once you get access to all these spells, best using Apotheosis and the likes of Peace of Mind to free up some AP at the beginning. Honestly, you can use Apotheosis and Peace of Mind and only have one turn of Apotheosis, because there's no way 2 Bloodstorms, 2 Grasp of the Starved, all along with like a turn of Death Wish, and an increased damage from the challenge. And then teleports as well on top. There's just no way they live. But yeah, another thing, the learning curve of this is learning how to use your teleports and your corpse explosion. Those like if you can learn and understand how to use them properly, you're going to be on the right path of playing Necromancer, because it's all about grouping enemies, doing the AoE damage, and then using your skills to do multiple things at once. So yeah, have a lot of fun with that, guys. It's absolute wrecking ball. And it works really nicely with my current setup here. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching as always, and see you guys in the next one.